Same thing we talked about, brick by brick, holes in our wheel, relentless, compete, poise. We need some damn poise on that sideline. But more importantly, man, at the end, what was it? We was all here. Looking at the offense, special teams, then went down to the defense, and we made plays like we said. We doing the thing. Hey, look, it ain't gonna be easy. We wish they all be like the first one, but they're gonna have to grind it out on something. We know we got corrections. You know what it is. Let's nip that in the butt. But you know what today? You know what I'm about to say next. Say you Wednesday!
Welcome to Raiders Roundtable, presented by America First Credit Union. Week 11, I'm JT. We'll bring in a bit Jason Horowitz and Lincoln Kennedy, the superb play-by-play team. You heard Antonio Pierce in the locker room. The Raiders have won 2 in a row. They have tremendous momentum as they head to Florida to take on the Miami Dolphins. And they got to start winning more big games on the road. This is a big test. The schedule gets more difficult, but we're here to wrap up the win against the Jets, and then we'll look into the Miami Dolphins. I'm thrilled to see what this team is doing. I'm a body language guy. You can see everybody on the sideline. Everybody is engaged on every play. Offense, defense, special teams. They're doing what they have to do. They're playing with grit and guts, high energy, and most importantly, we'll get into it on this one, the adjustments that the coaching staff made. It was 2 different teams, in my opinion, from the first half to the second half. So I love what the Raiders are doing. They had to do this after the Chicago and Detroit losses. They had to go back-to-back and beat the New York teams. They did. Mission accomplished. Now with Miami coming up, a better team, and they're even going to have to play better. I bring in the voice of the silver and black, Jason Horowitz. And again, my friend, that was a really tough game. Tough to call, I would assume. Penalties, things happening throughout the game. Give me your big picture as we begin on how the Raiders won that game.
Well, big picture is the fact that the offense was struggling with the exception of one drive. And then you get some points before halftime. You get a stop to start the third quarter. There's a takeaway down the stretch. There's a massive touchdown by a guy you've been waiting for big plays from. So, like, takeaways, there's a lot of really exciting things to come out of that game. And you, JT, like you said this, I think at halftime, the motto of this team isn't win pretty. It's just win, baby. Yeah. So, like, that, I think that's exactly what you take away from this team. And look, this team has won close games before. This team has even won close, ugly games this year with Josh McDaniels. But there's a different sense of excitement from within the players and the fan base, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, as we take a look, and if you're listening, we'll talk you through the highlights of this game. If you're watching it, Aaron Rodgers on the sideline with Davante Adams. They were out the night before, and then we come in, and I thought Zach Wilson looked pretty good early in this game. And I knew he would play better, Jason, after what happened on Monday night against the Chargers. He came out like a gunslinger.
No, he did. And Garrett Wilson, look, you've got one major player on offense on the backfield and then one on the outside, right? You've got Breece Hall and you've got Garrett Wilson, and they clearly had an emphasis early to get to Garrett Wilson. But this play was massive. Now, Max didn't get credit for a sack. There was an intentional grounding, and, later in the game, there's also another penalty, and this is a theme of the day for the Jets. But that would have been a sack. And there were plays all throughout the first half, JT, where, the Jets had 3 field goals, but on each of those drives, there were plays that the Jets could have had a much bigger lead than they did, and that was one of them.
You nailed it. There were a couple of plays that the Jets could have scored touchdowns. They were knocking on the door, and they didn't get in, and that would have been the difference in the game. If the Raiders were chasing 12-3, if the Raiders were chasing a 2-score game, I think it could have been a different game. What a catch by Davante. I thought that Lincoln Kennedy was amazing, very aggressive, pointing out that they were locked into Davante early on in this game. He said that a lot to you in the middle of the broadcast. Take me back to what they were trying to get Davante to do early in the game.
Well, I can't specify the first half targets. I can tell you that Aiden had 27 pass attempts. 13 of them went to Davante Adams when the game was all said and done. So Link was on that from the get-go, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. And so, that is certainly something that's going to have to be figured out. And look, this is not a new thing. My first game in the regular season as the play-by-play announcer for this franchise was in Los Angeles last year against the Chargers. And if you remember that, Davante from Derek Carr had more than half of the targets. So this is not a new thing. Davante is a Hall of Fame talent. And so you understand why they're going to want to work the football to him. Look, The Jets had 3 opening drives that got a lot of yards. And I think the credit, you mentioned adjustments for Antonio Pierce and for Patrick Graham. Credit to both of them because they did not allow that to continue for the entirety of the game, and that's a great thing. This is one of those plays you were just talking about, right? The interception thrown to Jordan Whitehead where he was locked in on a receiver, and Aiden's got to do a better job of that. He's double teams right there. If Whitehead doesn't catch that ball, Devontae's going to get laid out by C.J. Mosley, and that's not good either. That's something that Aiden's got to do differently moving forward. The
key to this moment in the game was right here with Zach Wilson stepping out of bounds. There was no need for him to step out of bounds. He was going to get tattooed either way. Look, there's no one about to hit him. He could still get in. Hobbs is coming, but I think if Hobbs hit him in the hip right here or hit him in the shoulder, he still gets a touchdown. He stepped out of bounds, and the Raiders got to stop and held him again. And I thought the tackling was good. The pressure was good right after that, Jason.
And that play right there, and that one kind of goes unnoticed because it's just a third down play, and it wasn't going to be a first down or it wasn't going to be a touchdown anyway because it was 3rd and goal. Adam Butler is playing really good football. And he got his hands on that one. John Jenkins, too. I don't know if we'll see some of the stops that John had. John is an 11-year veteran in the NFL, and he's kind of been a journeyman in his career. And I don't think that was one of the signings that went, that got any major notice throughout the course. By the way, that throw by Aiden was ridiculous.
Yes.
That he put through 3 different defenders. Yeah. But John Jenkins is having a Pro Bowl type season. And I don't know if he'll get there or not. There's great defensive tackles in the league. But for a guy in his 11th year that's never been a full-time starter, really, he's having a major impact on this D-line. And then Adam Butler, too, another guy that was kind of an unnoticed signing in the offseason. For a defensive unit that's trying to find somebody opposite Max Crosby, he's starting to get some help, and it's in different ways. And Adam Butler had another good game.
Yeah, we just saw before that Aiden took a sack that took the Raiders out of field goal range, and that was a big play. But once Aiden got in a rhythm and was setting his feet and throwing the ball to Josh Jacobs on a screen, you mentioned that bullet pass when he stepped in. I thought that Aiden found a rhythm here, and this is something we'll get to at the end here on what this has to look like.
This, JT, is right before. Now, that was the roughing the passer, so that gave him the free 15 yards. But this goes to your adjustments, right? Carlson's going to make a field goal here to go in a half. And so it's the last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half that last year and even this year crushed the Raiders, right? All those double-digit leads that they blew last year were because of things like that. This year, they got points. And then this spark here from DeAndre Carter. Like, this is why they signed DeAndre Carter. He led the NFL in punt returns last year. He's got a 30-yard return here. And they didn't get a ton of yards on the ensuing drive, but he set him up to have success.
He did, and we need him the rest of the way. This needs to happen in Miami. 2 games against Kansas City, and Antonio Pierce said he's getting pretty close to popping one here. For Aiden O'Connell, as we look at this 9-6 game, and it's still a tight game here, first downs were at a premium. I mean, the Jets defense, I knew watching the Jets this year, I knew the Jets defense was good, Jason. I didn't think they were this good. They were better than I expected at Allegiant Stadium.
Oh, they were. Listen, you've got one. We just talked about defensive tackles who are Pro Bowlers, right? Quinnen Williams, who he doesn't have the sacks that he had last year. He had 12 sacks last year, but there's no question he's making massive impacts in every game, and he made his impact felt in this game. And there's no question that Sauce Gardner is good. He may get away with a hold here or there, but Sauce Gardner is outstanding. C.J. Mosley's been a multiple-time Pro Bowler who again is having that type of year. And then, everyone talks about Quinnen Williams, but his brother Quincy got an extension in the offseason, and he played well too. So there's no question that they've got really good players. And here's where the game is tied. It was that 4th down pickup for Josh Jacobs on the short that he just got, but he just got it. We always hear about football as a game of inches. There's the inches, right? We hear about the inches. Now, speaking of inches, if this ball bounces a couple of inches to the left, you've got a very different story here, but it doesn't, so that turns out to be a big play.
Yeah, that's the 40-yard run by Josh Jacobs where he fumbled it at the end, and Sauce tried to get him to fumble it 20 yards into it. Very important play. You're right. It could have been fumbled out of the end zone. But here is the play. Aiden steps up, goes to his right. Michael Mayer goes up, moves his body, and comes down with the signature play. I always like to look at a signature play. I was behind you in the booth when you called this. I got it on video. I tweeted it out. This was a tough call for you because it looked like he was getting sacked. You had to pick up Michael Mayer, and then Mayer had to make the catch. Take me through this play.
So on top of all of that, you hear Lincoln in the background screaming, "Get rid of the football!"
Yeah, right?
Because you didn't want him to take a sack. And to that point, so he had to escape the pocket, and Mayer, who has a basketball background growing up in Kentucky, it just snatched it over the defender's head, which was amazing. I thought this is a pivotal moment too, JT, because the very next two plays are Jets' big gains to get them in field goal range. And the Raiders could have given up a touchdown, which would have sapped all the momentum away from this team. They gave up those two plays, but then nothing else. And so the Jets, yes, they answered with points, but they didn't answer with a touchdown. And so, like, that was a pivotal moment, because then here it gives the offense a chance to seal it. And they don't seal it because there is a fumble late in the game, but they took 6 minutes off the clock, JT. They
did. I think I've been following Jets media. They're really upset on some of the calls that were made. This play is unbelievable to Carter. I think this is another great game on 4th and an inch and how they're able to get that first down. This play, the entire league is looking at and talking about in their meetings today. Because everyone was talking about what Philadelphia does with their push play. How about this play, which was much more explosive, and it kept the clock going, as you said?
Yeah, I think in the call I said it looked like a fumble-rooski back in the day, and it did, except the ball doesn't go on the ground. And credit Bo Hardegree. And here's the fumble for Josh Jacobs. That, again, if Jets media is saying that the Jets, there's one specific on the fan who's saying that
got me going on
that the NFL wanted the Raiders to win. If the NFL wanted the Raiders to win, that would have been called he was down by contact before a fumble. So that's not true.
This is when Zach Wilson is trying to lead them to a victory. Okay, we're at 3:29 to go in the game, and I thought some of the check downs, they're kind of smart, but they don't take shots. One thing about the Jets don't take shots. Their big plays are bubble screens to go or slants where there's some missed tackles here. And Zach Wilson, as it's 3rd and 2, and we're talking 2:14, I'm there, you're calling the game, I'm in the stands going, oh no, it looks like this team is about to go take the lead. And there it is.
Right, and instead you get the interception here by Robert Spillane, and he hopped in front of that hitch route, which again was short. Zach Wilson's taking a lot of criticism.
You can't make that throw. You can't make that throw when you're trying to win the game. You make this throw in the first quarter, I get it, but the game's on the line. Checking down underneath on a slant? Come on.
It is on the line, and I agree that's a bad decision by Zach Wilson, but I actually thought he played better than he's getting credit for. He had made 8 completions. Now, this is the first throw, and you could say Garrett Wilson should have caught that. That's the first. But here's the Hail Mary that seals the game here for the Raiders. And by the way, I was at Michigan Stadium when Cordell Stewart threw the ball 75 yards in the air. Zach Wilson's got Max Crosby and his 75-foot arms behind him and somehow leans into a 58-yard throw that Garrett Wilson is over Nate Hobbs and almost catches.
Yeah.
Like, that's a heck of a throw, running to your left, throwing across your body with Max Crosby about to smack you in the shoulders. And he gave his guys a chance. But look, it's an Antonio Pierce victory. There's no question you brought in Antonio Pierce starting this, the locker room speech. There's things to clean up. They only gained 274 yards, but they did have 100 yards on the ground again, JT, for a second straight week after 0 in the first 8. And so as people are trying to find the identity is this is a physical running football team.
Yeah, it's
and
a running
team. There's
no
question that is what this team is going to be for the next 7 games of the season.
I would agree on that. It's obvious that they want to run the ball. 40 of that 148 was on Josh's big run. They're grinding it out.
Yep.
I mean, it's a tough 100 yards or 98 for Josh, and now he goes over 100. It's very physical. It seems like the number of 25 carries or more means a lot to this team. It means a lot, not only to Josh Jacobs. It means a lot to the offensive line. They want that number. They want that number there. Now, I'm going to push back a little bit on that because Kansas City and before that Miami, one of those 2 games you might not be able to get to that number if the score changes a bit, and you might have to turn into more of a passing team. And I want to segue to Michael Mayer, something I'm pounding on radio all week. He has got to be a bigger player in this scheme because he's single covered. Waller wasn't single covered. Kelsey's never single covered. Some of the best tight ends in the league are not. They're doubled with a linebacker and a safety. Michael Mayer has not been that player yet. I think the Raiders have a secret weapon the rest of the way. If Mayer can be dominant in a couple of these next 3 games coming up, maybe 2 out of 3, he could be the difference.
Well, he's got great hands. And, I went into the locker room after the game and, everyone was around him because his first career touchdown proves to be the game winner. And I waited for everyone to clear out. And I introduced myself because he and I had never met and spoken, excuse me. And And we talked about a bunch of things, and he was all excited. He didn't even know the game ball was in his locker, or his first career touchdown, which I thought was pretty cool. And then it was there. But we talked about his basketball background. He said his freshman year of high school, remember, he grew up in Kentucky, right? The blue bloods of basketball. John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins were those guys at Kentucky at the time. He's like, I quit football because I was on an AAU basketball team, and we were great. My high school team, we ended up winning state championships. And he's like, I quit football because I wanted to play basketball. And I said, oh, well, when did you go back? He's like, well, my freshman football coach made me go to 2 weeks of practice. He had me at tight end and linebacker. And he's like, give me 2 weeks of practice. And if you still want to quit, fine. And he loved it. He wore number 87. He's like, I've worn number 87 ever since then. But to your point, JT, he's got unique skills. Mm-hmm. He's tall. He's wide. He's got great hands. And clearly he's got good leaping ability. The one thing that I think gets left out of what you were just saying, though, is yes, he's single covered, but is he getting enough separation to get all of that? And I don't know that's true. Now, I'm not watching the 22 or every play on where he is. Obviously, as I'm calling the game, I'm not zoned in on him specifically on his routes. He didn't have any separation on that touchdown grab.
No.
You know what I mean? That's just all athletic skill. And you may get some of that. But maybe he becomes more of a focal point on some of those things. And I think that would be great because he is converting a lot of his catches into first downs. Yeah. And that is something that has to be a big part of this too.
Yeah, so we're looking at this again on YouTube and the other platforms. You can see Aiden looking left, tucks it down, rolls right, and throws it high point. Only
throw.
where.
How about that throw too?
Great throw.
That throw was incredible. You know, he's not set, and he just kind of puts it up there in a spot where, look, it's. You hear from analysts all the time. You have to put it in a spot where it's either out of bounds or your guy gets it. That's what Aiden did. Like, that's a great throw.
Mm-hmm. And I'll take you one step further. I didn't have the depth of the conversation you had in the locker room, but I bumped into Aiden O'Connell in the lunchroom here and met him a few times. And I asked him, I go, what was the key to that touchdown? When you stepped up in the pocket and moved to the right, and he looks at me and he goes, it was a great catch. He didn't say a word about himself, what he did. He gave all the credit to Michael Mayer. I came back up here in the studio. I was telling the team that. I couldn't believe how humble this guy is. It wasn't like, hey, I had to step up. I saw this to the left. He gave all the credit to Michael Mayer. And I think that's what's unique when you have a player, as you know, in the rookie class with you. You're supposed to get extra reps. You're supposed to stay together. You go out to dinner together. You do things together. And Aiden O'Connell's a mature guy who's married. I mean, he's not a rookie, 21 years old, running around Las Vegas.
Hey, I was married at 25, too. Come on.
This guy is mature beyond his years, but he made a couple of throws that he had to make. And you referenced earlier in the highlights, there was one where he stepped in and threw in triple coverage with around three players, and the ball got there. It reminded me of a Justin Herbert throw that he threw here in overtime that got to the back of the end zone in front of two Raider defenders I always talk about. I love that arm strength because I believe the Raiders are going to need it. And I'm going to bring this up with Lincoln when he comes on too. This game's gone. It's over. It was an ugly win. We'll take the win. But now this quarterback might have to have, a 30, 35 attempt game or more so, and he's going to have to make a lot of throws and make smart decisions, taking a sack or throwing it out of bounds. What leads you to believe, and what have you seen that tells you he can take the next step in a couple of these games that might turn out to be shootouts?
Look, I mean, I almost think it's unfair to ask him to become Patrick Mahomes and Tua Tagovailoa in his fourth career start, right? I mean, that seems unfair. The question is, can he make enough throws to keep the offense moving in games where you cannot have as many 3-and-outs or drives that end in with one first down and then a punt like they had against the Jets? Now, in all fairness, the Dolphins' defense is not that of the Jets. Now, Jalen Ramsey is back, has played a couple of games. They didn't have him for the first 6 or 7. He had the injury. Now, that makes their secondary better. So you've got some parts here for Miami that do make it difficult. They're coming off a bye and they're coming off a loss. So there's some things here that are working against the Raiders in Week 11 in this game particularly. But I do think, that throw, because all the talking heads about Aiden O'Connell when he was drafted, he's not mobile. He doesn't have the biggest arm strength, all those things that we heard. But the touchdown pass, you don't have to be Zach Wilson running for 20 yards. You have to move to throw, and that's what he did. He was able to move, maneuver the pocket, and throw. That's the touchdown. And then with arm strength, you don't always have to be throwing it 60 yards. How many times do you throw the ball 60 yards?
Not many.
But against the Giants, he hit Trey Tucker for a 50-yarder. Against the Jets, he slung that football between 3 defenders with enough zip to get to Devontae Adams, who made the catch. It's timely arm strength. It's timely deep balls, and it's timely mobility. And we have seen that in frankly, all 3 starts that he has had. And I think more importantly, yes, you referenced this, JT. He took those 2 sacks that took them out of field goal range in the first half. And he also took 1 more later in the game. But that's it. You know, he didn't take 7 sacks. And so he didn't take any against the Giants. He did all of those things. He's getting better in spots. And so, look, it's not a perfect body here, right? It's a 4th-round draft pick who's about to make his 4th ever start. It's, are you making the plays when you have to put your team in position to win? And that'll be the test the next couple of weeks against Tua Tagovailoa, who's having an historic season with the Dolphins and Tyreek Hill, and against Patrick Mahomes when they come to Allegiant Stadium Thanksgiving weekend.
Last one, a quick one. What do you think is the one major key, the big thing that the Raiders have to do to win in Miami?
I'm going to go with stop the run, right? Because if you know the Dolphins have speed that teams don't have, right? Tyreek Hill is on pace to have 130 catches and the first ever 2,000-yard receiving season in NFL history. Nobody has that speed, and the Raiders certainly know that firsthand. Tyreek's had 11 career games against the Raiders, so that's one. But if you're dealing with that and you're giving up 5 yards a carry to Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and those guys, you have no chance against that offense. But if you at least can hold the running game to 3.5 yards a carry, then you set yourself up in knowing passing situations where at least you give yourself a chance to stay with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So it's got to be that. And then from the offensive standpoint, JT, real quickly, long drives.
Yeah.
5-6 minute sustained drives where you're converting 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 10-play drives. Can you get 3 or 4 of those in the game? And even if they wind up in field goals, you're making it a shorter game, you got a chance.
Safe travels to South Florida. We'll talk to you next week when they come back to Kansas City at home. Have a great holiday.
Yeah. Good 2 games here, JT. Talk to you soon, bud.
You got it. Jason Horowitz, great play-by-play voice. He had another big game. Signature calls this year, and hopefully the Raiders keep it up on the road. When we come back, the great Pro Bowler Lincoln Kennedy will join us. My favorite segment. I love all the segments we have, radio, here on YouTube, the Roundtable, television. But Lincoln comes in. He comes in with fire. We'll get his analysis of what happened against the Jets, and we'll look forward to Miami. Lincoln Kennedy on deck as we continue on Raiders Roundtable.
When you're a part of a team, there are expectations. And one of the things I expect from my team is trust. I work hard to win, and I trust my team to work hard too. That's why I feel good about America First Credit Union. They're my financial team, and I trust that they'll always be there for me and my community. I'm Hunter Renfro. Join me in the America First team today.
60 years in the making, the Raiders now have a permanent place to call home, and the doors are open to get a world-class behind-the-scenes tour of their new home. An attraction unlike any other in Las Vegas, Allegiant Stadium. The Las Vegas Raiders invite you to experience the expertly guided tour that includes exclusive access to areas restricted to only football players, coaches, and staff. For more information, visit AllegiantStadium.com/tours.
Michael, congratulations on your very first touchdown. It was a tied game at that point. Take us through the play.
Honestly, it was a little bit of a broken play. Me and Aiden were laughing about that after the game a little bit. But what happened was I had a flag route, and I went under Jacoby. I was supposed to go over Jacoby, and Aiden rolled out a little bit. But beautiful ball by number 4, Aiden O'Connell. Beautiful. He only put it where I could get it. The defender had absolutely no chance. And, that's something we rep. That's something we practice during the week is going up and getting the ball, pinning it, and things like that. So that felt really good. I'm sure that felt good for Aiden, too. Honestly, at the end of the game, my teammates just told me that was the only touchdown of the game. I honestly didn't know that. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool for my first one.
Wait, where's the ball? Did you get the ball, or did somebody throw it into the stands or something weird? Okay, you have it with
right
you.
There.
Thank goodness.
It's right behind me.
Okay, keep that tight.
All right, I was about to say you got to keep that first one. But I just got one question, because if I would have made that play, and I made a couple back in my days, but if I would have made that, I would have walked to the sideline and I would have said, I told y'all, just throw it up. So what did you say to the young quarterback after that catch, man, getting number 1 touchdown of your career, man? How'd it feel?
Well, that's the thing. Really, since me and Aiden got drafted here, that's what I've been telling him since day one. Just throw the dang ball out to me.
There you go.
And look, he finally listened today. He finally listened today.
He'll do it more. He'll do it some more now.
Mike, tell me how things have changed for the last 2 weeks for you personally.
Look, man, I'm enjoying coming to the facility. I'm enjoying practicing. I'm enjoying the energy. I'm enjoying the intent that we have in the facility and on the practice field in terms of this is what we need to get better at. This is what we need to do. And you can also smile, enjoy it, and have fun while you're doing this. I've enjoyed it a lot. I know, the captains and my teammates have enjoyed it too. And look, man, we're 5-5. We're back in this thing. We're at 500 right now. So let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's keep practicing how we've been practicing and keep this thing rolling. Walk us through the interception. How did it happen? I know he'd been completing some of those middle throws early in the game. Talk us through how you're able to get the pick.
We broke out our cover 4 late in the game. We'd been a lot of 3-match, a lot of cover 2. So that cover 4 let me play a little more lateral. And Devine did a great job of holding that window. Made Zach Wilson double pump, and it gave me time to get there. So just great team defense. I'm proud to be a Raider, and we want to keep playing Raider football going forward.
You've said that twice now, Raider football. Tell us what that is. We know what we saw out there, but what does it mean to you guys in that locker room?
Yeah, it means blue collar, tough nose, not taking anything from our opponents, being really stingy up front. So we just got to continue to dedicate our lives to being good on defense, and good things will happen.
Talk to us a little bit about Antonio Pierce, because, he's always been your coach, linebackers, but after the pick, man, it was a big embrace with you two. What was said? I know it's an emotional moment, especially him being your coach from the get-go and you getting him a W.
Playing for AP means the world to me. I don't want to let him down. Being his guy, I was in his room all year. I take it upon myself to go out there and play my hardest for him and for my brothers. So anytime we can come out of here with the W, it's a huge win. We're 5-5. We're back in business. So we just got to keep pushing, foot on the gas going forward.
Welcome back to Raiders Roundtable, presented by America First Credit Union. Thanks to Jason Horowitz. We bring in his partner, the Pro Bowler Lincoln Kennedy, the College Football Hall of Famer. And, Link, great to see you as you get ready for a long trip coming up to South Florida, one I'm sure you're looking forward to.
Well, always looking forward to South Florida. The problem is that the Raiders notoriously don't play well when we go to South Florida, and I remember those days back as a player. I'm hoping that they'll be able to change it this time around. But it's good to be with you, JT.
Great to be with you. Let's look back at the game, and I want to start with your specialty, the offensive line. I'm not confused this year, but I'm seeing really good PFF grades, and then I'm seeing a first half that I didn't think they were great, and then adjustments. What do you think of the offensive line? Are they playing above their ability? Are they playing very well, average? Give me your consensus opinion on this O-line.
Well, we're probably about halfway through the season, I guess. So I would say that my assessment of the offensive line is it's still a continuing building relationship. The thing is that they've had interchangeable parts, mainly on the outside with the tackles, as you know, with Jermaine Illuminor or Thayer Munford, guys like this. Now, the thing about it is that what we saw last week against the Jets was sort of a patchwork type of offensive line. You put it together so you can go out there and service what you need on the field. And I thought they did, fairly well for what the concerns were. And especially when you talk about that defensive line that Jets brought, it's very influential and it's a part of their team that is well respected. It's coming together. I think what you see consistently is a movement to try to figure out what combination works best for what you're trying to do. Okay. And I've said this before. I believe Jermaine Illuminor is a better zone blocker than he is a man blocker. Thayer Munford is a better man blocker than he is a zone blocker. With that being said, so you have that plug and play at your right tackle spot. Last week was with Colton Miller being down. You know, Illuminor had to go over to the left side and play left tackle. I thought they did pretty well. Thought they did. It was what it was worth. And for the main part, what we saw in the last two games was that the running game was getting progressively better.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we can definitely take solace in.
Yeah, we're looking at some Josh Jacobs highlights of the game here, and take me behind the scenes from what you've learned about his communication now with Antonio Pierce and everyone involved here. What does that mean? You've played with some really good running backs. Josh Jacobs is one of the best in a short time in Raiders history. What do you think he's talking about, and what are you picking up on when he's talking about the communication with the O-line and the coaching staff?
Well, what I've seen, JT, is not so much communication. It's coming from the aspect of a running back who's running hard. When you give the ball to Josh Jacobs, you see that a lot of times, and I told Jason about this when we were talking on broadcast, you know, Josh Jacobs is making cuts in the backfield the moment he gets the handoff. That's no-go. But he's running hard. He's running. He's really trying to put himself out there and show that he wants to win for this team. And I appreciate that. I respect that. And I think what it creates, JT, is that the fact the offensive line and everybody else wants to block that much harder. The coaching staff wants to call that many more running plays to try to get the ball to number 8. And that's what we've seen. So it's coming along. It's a progression. It's something that, in my opinion, JT, we've been looking at it all season, is trying to get the right combination, play call, timing, and obviously, going out there in the output. So it's a progression that's working slowly in Josh Jacobs' favor. Yeah, we're looking at some of his stats from the first 8 games to the last 2, where the attempts 26.5, up from 16.6, 107. So you can see a drastic change here, Lincoln, and I'm really positive on this because I love Josh Jacobs' game. But those opponents, the Jets give up a lot of yards on the ground. The Giants are the Giants. And I wonder, as we get into our conversation, how that will change at the Dolphins and home to Kansas City, where it might be tough to get them 25, 26 touches a game. Well, this is one of those times, JT, where you're talking about you have to make a considerable effort to run the football. And the main reason why is because now your offense becomes your best defense. If you're able to control the ball, time of possession, keep the ball away from those other offenses, KSC as well as Miami, then your job is to slow them down. That's what you're trying to do, and that becomes your best defense. So having a running game and having it up to par like we've had it the last couple of weeks is absolutely essential. Let's get to the Raiders' defense as they played against the Jets. This Spillane, after the game, they show the scar on his hand. I'm sure you saw that on social media. It looks like Frankenstein over his hand. He's making an interception with a broken hand after surgery. Look, I know the history of this team, and you played on this team, and you're a big part of it, but historically, that's next-level stuff. This is an organization that had Hendricks, Millen, Villapiano, Rod Martin. We go through the list of linebackers, and I'm not putting him at that level yet, but to play through the pain and the injury of the hand and to have a signature play like that, let's begin with Robert Spillane and what you saw with his progress and the performance. Well, I'm thankful for it because we saw a number of dropped interceptions this season. Yeah. The fact that he was able to catch it and complete it was essential, and the Raiders win. Look, the thing is that you're talking about linebackers who are going back 3, 4, almost 5 decades ago, right? In many respects. It's about time. It's about time the Raiders have a defense that they can commend. Not only, you have Max Crosby, but you have, Spillane coming out. And I was concerned about this. I was concerned about the linebacker position. I was concerned about the secondary position. When Patrick Graham came out and said, this year that we need to create turnovers, we need to create opportunities for our offense, I was concerned about it because we haven't seen it quite as well in the past. But it was definitely well received this past weekend. Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't know much about Spillane other than the big game he had on Christmas Eve against the Jets, against the Raiders in Pittsburgh, and he had a big game there. And I was wondering, is that the type of player that we're giving a shot to? Because Kwiatkowski before that, he wasn't up to the standard. He's up to the standard. This guy's got a legit position on this team going forward, and that's refreshing to me. And I said it about Divine Diablo, too. When healthy and he's out there, I love the way his body has gotten bigger and stronger, and he's able to go sideline to sideline. And that's very important here because going forward, I don't think they have to fill that position anymore.
But it's going to be interesting because Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, two different teams, the way they like to exploit the middle of the field. So I like what the linebackers are doing. I think they're playing a little bit better than expected. And then we'll go to the secondary where Marcus Peters, you and I talked about it on the air and off the air. He's fortunate to be on this team after Chicago. After Chicago, he got a lot of heat around this building and especially around the league, and he stepped up to the challenge. His snap count is amazing. He's playing well, along with Spillane, as we're looking at his total tackles, 81, 3 for a loss, 2.5 sacks, and the interceptions ranked number 1 at 3. So with him playing well, Lincoln, do you think that's helping out the back end of the secondary?
Well, I definitely think it's essential when you have a player of Marcus Peters' capability. The fact is that he's one of those zone read type of corners that pays attention to the quarterback and is able to jump routes. He's good at it. And look, the sky's the limit when you talk about his ability, JT, and you talk about what he's been able to do for this defense. They still need some help in the secondary, in my opinion. And there's a lot of times where I consider, number 24 need to put out a little bit more effort. But for what it's worth and where we are with this defense, I think it's a growing progression, much like Spillane. Look, when we got Spillane, I was concerned, and I was glad that they got Spillane because he was one of those guys that to me, is able to cover the tight end and able to cover the running back out of the backfield, which is absolutely essential, as Devon Diablo has been, struggling and growing to do in the progression. But you got to have a linebacker that's capable of doing it. And we'll see when Travis Kelce and the Raiders and the Chiefs come on to the Raiders, we'll see if anybody's able to slow down number 87. You think about the years past, nobody's been able to do it in a Raider uniform. So it's absolutely essential. But Marcus Peters gives you that hand, that sort of wherewithal with that cornerback position that you can rely on. So he's got to stay healthy. You got to stay out there because right now the Raiders are short on cornerbacks.
Max Crosby had another solid game that didn't show up in the stat sheet all the time in this game, but they were double and tripling him and chipping him. My concern is Tyree Wilson now because Malcolm Kuntz is coming on, and you're a straight shooter here. When you look at the numbers and you get the rotation of what's going on, look at Max as we're looking at the highlights, making plays, but Spillane hitting the gap along with Kuntz, and the rest of the defensive tackles have been playing well. But the opposite edge rusher of Max Crosby has got to feel pretty good all week long knowing that Max is going to get double and triple teamed here. What are you seeing on the other side? We're looking at the Kuntz sack and the way he bent coming around that corner. That was an impressive play.
I told Jason before the broadcast last weekend that Malcolm Kuntz was one of the guys that I had highlighted that I thought was going to have a big game, mainly because the left tackle for the Jets struggles with speed rush, and that's exactly what we saw. Excuse me. So going forward, you already know the deal, JT. You know that Max Crosby is going to be double and triple teamed. It's got to be somebody else that's a rise. I'm not as concerned with a lot of the Raider Nation is with Tyree Wilson. And the reason why is because I believe he still has to learn how to play at this level, especially coming off of the injury, the significant injury that he had coming out of college, and to play against this level of talent. You got to understand something. When you're going up against the left tackle, you're going up who's arguably considerably the best offensive lineman that the other team has. So you're going to expect to have to learn a growing assignment for it. Malcolm Kuntz has come a long way since he was drafted, and the same thing will be for Tyree Wilson in the end.
All right, let's get to Aiden O'Connell and his overall performance there. A win, which is important. He played better against the Jets than Mahomes did, and a bunch Jalen Hurts. Better quarterback rating. So it wasn't all pretty here. He took a couple of sacks that took him out of field goal range, but the completed throws that he made, and a couple of them early to Devontae. I mentioned before you came on, you were very vocal about the targets. I was in the booth with you as he was going to Devontae early. Looking back on that, was that the right thing to do to get a young quarterback in line and locked into the best player on the field?
The best thing that you can do for Aiden O'Connell is speed up his progression. You got to speed up his progression, JT. And the thing is that he took a couple sacks, and it was a learning. Everything that Aiden O'Connell is going through right now is a learning experience on the National Football League level. And you'll learn as a young quarterback, when you're in your positive territory, you can't take a sack. You can't get out of field goal position or field goal range because that costs you points. So that's a learning process. I will say that it's so far what we've seen out of Aiden O'Connell is a growing progression. And that's going to continue to go throughout the season, especially you take on some of these defenses. The fact is that out of 30 pass attempts, 13 of them were targeted to number 17. To me, that's a little excessive. Okay. I understand Devontae Adams is a playmaker. I get it. But you can't force the ball to it. And more importantly, what defenses are starting to pay attention to, just like they did in Chicago, if you're going to notoriously go after number 17, we're going to sit on some of those routes because we know he's being double covered. You've got to expose someone else. You got to go to someone else. More importantly, you got to make sure everyone else on that offense feels that they are a part of that offense and not just going through the motions.
All right, little pushback from me on that one because Devontae, a couple of the bullets that he threw to Devontae were in double-team coverage. And I was sick of the excuse by everybody saying, well, Devontae's doubled on every play. So is everybody else in this league. Jamar Chase, Jefferson, the elite players are doubled on every play. You just saw Garrett Wilson get doubled a lot, and the ball finds their way to him. And the target is a big number around here, Lincoln. It's a huge topic amongst Raider fans. Like, Renfro gets 1 target for 5 yards. Okay, why not 7? Is it because Devontae's getting too many? Michael Mayer, I'm going to get into this. He could be explosive in the next couple of days. If the Raiders don't pick up first downs early on these drives, and they don't have 6, 7, 8 plays per drive here, Devontae's probably going to get 1 of the 2 targets on these 3 and outs. The 3 and outs got to be cut down, and I think Devontae is still the best weapon on that short slant, on that 50-50 ball a lot of the times here. I'm just wondering how it's going to play out in Miami because Jalen Ramsey's a pretty good player, and they're going to have a safety over the top.
There's no doubt about it. Okay, so here's how I break that down, what you just said, JT. The thing is I don't mind you trying to force the ball or trying to get the ball to your playmakers. Mm-hmm. I don't mind that. The thing becomes is that you can't put it in jeopardy. And to your point, JT, what I'll go back to is it's first down efficiency to me. The offense has got to have first down efficiency. You've got to put yourself in a premium position, whether it's 2nd down and 5, 3rd down and 4, those types of things, rather than starting out going for an incompletion on the first down, and now you have 2nd down and 10 or 3rd down and 10. That makes it increasingly hard to get a first down. So first down efficiency is part of it. But more importantly, if Davante Adams is double teamed, how do you find the ball to get to him? Well, first of all, you understand what the team's trying to do double team. You break down how they're trying to double team him, whether it's outside corner and safety over the top or whatever the combination is, and you move him into different spots. Instead of having him at the X or the Z, you put him in a slot position. Right. You make him come out of there. We saw against the Giants those slants that the Raiders were able to take advantage of. That was a great read by Aiden O'Connell. The reason why it happened mostly, JT, is because there wasn't a linebacker in the middle. So you're reading the defense and you're understanding what the defense is giving to you going forward. That's the same type of creativity moving forward the Raiders need to have. Just can't force the ball to 17. When you come out with a play and you know that he's double team or triple team, don't put the ball in jeopardy. I have a problem with that.
Yeah, this is really interesting to our audience because with the former coach, if you took a shot on first down, it's a lock. It's a lottery ticket. It's going to be a handoff into the pile on 2nd down. And the way Josh was playing in the first 8 games is going to be a gain of 2 or 3. And here we go again. It's 3rd and 7. And with Bo Hardigree now, I don't want to see such a struggle on 3rd and 10. 3rd and 10 is not 3rd and 25. 3rd and 10 is not 3rd and 17. 3rd and 10, this team really struggles running a basic play to get 10 yards with Hunter Renfro, Jacoby Myers, Davante Adams, Michael Mayer, and even Josh on a wheel route. So I'm hoping that Michael Mayer emerges as a Dave Casper-type player on 3rd and 10. Run a 12-yard route, not a 30-yard route. Get the ball to the wide-open guy because Davante's going to be double-teamed. And, Lincoln, I haven't seen Michael Mayer double-teamed once this year. So I think 3rd down, the rookie-to-rookie, is going to be big over the next couple of weeks. How do you see it?
Well, that's why I go back with first down efficiency. The fact is you can't put yourself in 3rd down and 10. You can't put yourself in 3rd down and 9 or those types of situations. The main reason is because defenses know you've already shown your hand where you're going to go with the football. You want to go to 17. You want to go to 16. Okay, we're going to take those 2 players away. And more importantly, because the offensive line hasn't been as solid with pass protection, you don't have a lot of time to sit back there and survey the field. You've got to go with your first cuts. One thing I will appreciate, or I do appreciate that came out of the Jets game, JT, is the fact that you saw a lot of tunnel screens, a lot of bubble screens. Those to me are like extended runs. You're trying to get to the sideline. You're trying to get to the wide part of the field. That's what I see those as. And if you're able to make the defense run sideline to sideline, eventually you're going to be able to wear them down if you get production out of it. It's just the fact the Raiders didn't have enough of those plays, offensive play calls during the game.
I've been dying to ask you this all week. I look at Mike McDaniel and what he's done from the Shanahan tree, going back to Washington. I mean, he's a sharp play caller, but he's aggressive. Yeah. He's aggressive. He's a riverboat gambler, and sometimes Tua has those Mahomes plays, the shuttle pass, where he's in the shotgun. All of a sudden, you got a double team to Tyreek. You got Jalen Waddle far wide. And all of a sudden, he's throwing a shuttle pass to Mostert or someone up the middle, and boom, no one's there. He is aggressive. And I'm wondering if Bo Hardigree is going to want to riverboat gambler and match that at times in games, or this is just going to be a running game. Look, we're going to play keep away. Josh is going to have to get 140 yards. We're going to have to shorten the game and get Tua off of his spot. Let's transition to Tua, because if you give him time, he's very efficient. If you get him off his spot, he's been known to turn it over a lot.
If you watch and pay attention to the way Tua and this offense plays, they like to create a lot of what I would say yards after the catch or yards after the play. They want to get beyond the line of scrimmage, and it's yards. With that much speed, not only in the running back position, but obviously, with the wide receiver position, the sky's the limit. There's so many things you can do. You're going to stretch the defense. You're going to force the safety to stay deep, or at least two safeties to stay deep. And that's going to take you away from your ability to stop the run. The Miami Dolphins have been blessed with a running game as well as a passing attack. And as what you're talking about, JT, the creativity and the fact that you can be aggressive is because they know they have a potent offense that can score a lot and can score quickly. So to me, the Raiders' best defense is to play keep away from that offense.
Yeah, we said it. I was asking George Atkinson. I talk to Freddie all the time, Villapiano. I like their opinion on this team because they know offense and defense, and they know different eras of football. And this is a very tough matchup for the Raiders. But the Dolphins haven't beaten anyone with a 500 record or better. They've lost to all the good teams that they've played this year, and the Raiders are coming in with momentum. And I think the Raiders now have got to feel, Lincoln, very important question, if they can get to halftime with a manageable score. This is a team that put up 70 on Denver, and Denver just beat Buffalo. So Denver's getting better. If the game is manageable and the Raiders can get to halftime 17-14, they're up 21-20, whatever the number is, I believe the Raiders' cardio and the way they've played physically, because Denver's more of a finesse team than the Raiders are, and the Raiders, I believe, are more physical. I think the Raiders have more than a puncher's chance playing a 30-minute game. Remember, in that Buffalo game in Orchard Park, Raiders came out and scored. They looked really good, and then Buffalo, right before the end of the half, put it away. They just buried the Raiders at the end of the half, and the Raiders couldn't come from behind. How do the Raiders keep this game manageable, Lincoln, in the first 30 minutes?
We have to see the effort and the sort of energy that we saw against the Giants.
Yes.
Not the first half against the Jets. You have to see that effort come out against the Giants. And I think that's essential, the way you start the game. If you get down a couple of touchdowns, it's all over. The Raiders do not have that ability to catch up. They have to keep everything in balance. And if they're able to go into halftime and with either a small lead or they're not that far behind, they can build off of that energy they showed the first half. But what cannot happen, JT, and it's absolutely essential, is you cannot have the effort that you saw in the first half against the Jets against this team, because the Raiders will find themselves down by 35 points.
That's really important what you just brought up. Look at the difference between points per game. 31.7 for Miami, 17.2 for the Raiders. Now, turnover differential, -7 for the Raiders. That'll get better, and -4 for the Dolphins. And the Raiders are right there, but the stats lean heavy towards Miami. And as we get ready to wrap this up, what was the difference? I can't wait to talk to Coach Pierce on this. What was the difference with the adjustments and the energy level? I thought the Jets were the better team in the first half. They were. And then the Raiders, something happened in that locker room, and the body language, everything that they looked like in the second half was completely different. My theory is the Raiders were playing for their lives. If they lose that game and drop to 4-6, I don't care if you're a Raider fan or not. No one in the country is going to think the Raiders are coming back from 4-6. 5-5 is a different story. Did you see that in the booth, that the team played more desperate and more on fire?
Well, I saw them. They definitely played more on fire than they did the first half. And I told Jason, I said, during the broadcast, it's one of those things where you watch the energy level and you watch the output and you're concerned about it because, like, what happened? But, being a player in the locker room, those types of locker rooms, I've had many coaches come in and say, you know what? Halftime, 0-0. Let's go back out there. Let's wake it up. Let's do it. And that's what we saw in the second half. It was definitely a tale of two halves between this Raiders team, the Raiders versus the Jets, in my opinion, JT, because we saw a different team in the second half. We didn't see in the first half. Somebody lit a fire up under this team. Offense, defense, special teams. Somebody lit a fire. And more importantly, like I told Jason during the broadcast, I always appreciate complimenting football. special teams complements the defense. Defense complements the offense, so on and so forth. That circle, that's what you saw in the second half, and that's why the Raiders were able to get a win.
I want you to share the story. We've been friends for a long time. You walk over the Hacienda Bridge from your hotel. You got your music in your ears. You got fans coming up to you. You don't stop. If they want a selfie, they have to walk with you. Then you have your routine before you get in there. What have you noticed the last 2 weeks at home with this fan base and the energy they brought to Allegiant Stadium?
Much like the team, there's been a higher energy now that Antonio Pierce is now coaching the team. There's been a higher energy out of the fan base. There's a lot of believers. And you know this as well as I do. Allegiant Stadium has become one of the great wonders of the world because every visiting team has to come and show themselves there. And look, I get it. And it's like, what's funny is that when I went to buy a cigar in Mandalay Bay, the lady was talking to me. She was like, "I'm glad you're a Raider fan." I said, "Well, what's wrong?" She's like, "Well, all these Jet fans are coming and buying cigars." I'm like, "I don't want to sell a cigar to Jet fans." And I told her, I said, "Look, we want them to spend their money here too. Right. I mean, spend your money. We also want them to go home with an L." And that was the fortune that was able to happen for the last couple of weeks.
Back-to-back wins against New York, New Jersey. A great thing to get the Raiders to 5-5. Safe travels across the country to Miami, and we'll talk to you when Kansas City comes to town.
Love you, brother.
All right, there he is. Love you too, the great Lincoln Kennedy. I tell you, he's a special guy. We're lucky to have him, love his content, and he brings it every time. When we come back, we'll look at the schedule coming up, and we're into the schedule around here. It gets a little bit tougher before a bye week that comes late into the season as we continue on Raiders Roundtable.
When you're a part of a team, there are expectations. And one of the things I expect from my team is trust. I work hard to win, and I trust my team to work hard too. That's why I feel good about America First Credit Union. They're my financial team, and I trust that they'll always be there for me and my community. I'm Hunter Renfro. Join me and the America First team today.
You're listening to Upon Further Review. I'm your host, Eddie Pascal.
Good morning, Raider Nation.
Welcome to Raiders Roundtable. JT along with Q Myers.
He dissects the play quickly and makes the move to the football.
To be a Raider is to be bold, powerful, and loyal.
What's a Raider? Always a Raider.
Raider Nation family is authentic, with a heart here in Las Vegas. We are often imitated, but can never be duplicated. Why?
The autumn wing is a Raider.
Because there is only one nation. Keep up with the 2023 season by downloading the mobile Raiders app or visiting Raiders.com/connect for scores, where to watch, and what's happening next.
Welcome back to Raiders Roundtable, presented by America First Credit Union. Thanks again to Lincoln Kennedy. As we go around the AFC West, and a lot's happened since last week's episode. First, Detroit going into L.A. to beat the Chargers. That was massive because the Chargers got a really good roster. And for whatever reason, the Chargers can't get out of the way of themselves here. And this was a shootout, an absolute shootout. It was one of the first times a team scored on their last 5 possessions and lost in a long time. So the Chargers were able to do it offensively. In their defense, they have a defensive head coach in Brandon Staley. They just gave up big play after big play down the stretch. Herbert, 27 of 40 for 323. He had 4 touchdowns and a 114 rating in a loss. And Goff was fantastic. 333, 2 touchdowns, a 122 quarterback rating. And that's where he used to play in that building with the Rams. They went back and forth. Detroit wins the game. For the Chargers are in big trouble now. Chargers have got to find a way, for them at least, to try to salvage the season in the next week or two. And for Raider fans, I think they're pretty happy about the result here, as this was without a doubt the most exciting game. It wasn't the most dominant game. That was the Niners at the Jaguars. But this was the best television shootout, 41-38 here. Got to give Dan Campbell credit here, too. They went for it on 4th down late to go win the game and to get in better field goal range, and they pulled it off here. And from time to time, the Chargers get a break like this. If you're watching, we're seeing the field goal here that ended up winning the game, and the Chargers lose in that shootout, and that's a massive win for Detroit. And their big picture is the 2 seed in the NFC. You look at the Niners and the Cowboys and some of the good teams that are all chasing Philadelphia. They're chasing the Detroit Lions as well, and that's a big win for them on the road. And then we go to Monday Night Football, which is such a massive topic on sports radio and everywhere else, that the fact that the Denver Broncos won this game. The Sutton catch on the sidelines, one of the best catches of the year. Russell Wilson threw that 6 yards out of bounds, it felt like, and he caught it to toe tap here. They went on a walk-off, and Josh Allen played a terrible game, but led him back to take the lead, and they thought they were going to win the game. And the Broncos, at the end of the game, it was wild as they tried to hold on to the ball. Russell Wilson played much better. Hey, they're fixing Russell Wilson, Raider Nation. He was awful last year, and he started off terrible this year. Sean Payton needed a couple of weeks to get him right, and he's right. And that last game of the year, I hope it matters for the Raiders, because that Denver game is going to be a big one, because Russell Wilson's playing as good as anybody. But what happened at the end was an absolute fiasco. Why were the Bills blitzing on the last play of the game where they get a flag? They're out of field goal range. Sean McDermott decides to blitz, has single coverage over the top, pass interference, then 12 men on the field. This is a fireable offense, and they fired the offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. So Dorsey gets fired. They come out there. They have a second lease on life, and Denver makes the field goal. And I know a lot of Raider fans want to see Denver lose. I get it. But we need Buffalo to lose too. So taking a look at what's in front of us here with the AFC West, Kansas City 7-2. It's the Raiders 5-5, Chargers 4-5, and Denver 4-5. Denver plays Minnesota. The Chargers are at Green Bay. I got to assume they're going to win that game to get to 5-5, and Denver could get to 5-5. Raiders with a really tough game at Miami, and Kansas City, Philadelphia is a rematch of the Super Bowl coming up. That could be the biggest game of the year. That looks to be a Super Bowl preview again, unless one of those teams trip up. So the Raiders, golden opportunity here as we take a look at the next 4 games for the Silver and Black. At Miami, on the road, early slot. The Raiders are going to get out there on Saturday. I kind of like that move. It did not work in West Virginia to go back to Buffalo. That game was a disaster. I like what they're doing this time around. Kansas City at home, week 12 before the bye week. And then after the bye week, a lot of Viking fans had this game circled. And with Joshua Dobbs and no more Kirk Cousins, a game that looked like the Raiders would have the advantage, all of a sudden the Vikings are 6-4. What are the Vikings' record going to be there? So you can say right now playing a 6-4 team on the back end, a bye week, 7-2 and 6-3. Raiders have one of the toughest schedules in all the NFL, and they have to win these games. They have to win 2 out of 3 of the games. They want to win all of them. This is the moment now, Raider Nation, where the Raiders got to find a way to win a game that people don't think they can win. It's the Dolphins. The Dolphins are a good team. They are not an elite team. They haven't been an elite team the last 4, 5, 6 years. It's all been about New England and Buffalo in the AFC East for over a decade. Now, Miami's much improved. And then Kansas City, a lot of fans I talk to think that's the game of the year, rightfully so, because we get Kansas City, the Super Bowl champs, at home. That offense without Tyreek Hill. Kelsey's another year older, but very good. And the defense is ascending for Kansas City. And then the bye week, which feels like it's a mile away from here. That bye week, the Raiders have got to keep the energy up behind Antonio Pierce. I'll tell you this, being in this building, the energy is sky high. The Raiders have momentum. They've won 2 in a row. They've got to find a way to play their best football in Miami. Keep it close. Let Carlson win it late. Let Devontae or Josh Jacobs run out the clock. And hopefully the Raiders come home for a big victory party, cigar party again. I'd support a cigar party in South Beach if they win that game. And then they'll come home for the Kansas City Chiefs. Thanks to everybody at Silver and Black Productions. Thanks for watching and listening to Raiders Roundtable. We'll talk to you again next week.